The Legacy of the Twin Bond. Chapter 8. Dawn came thin and gray, as though the sky itself feared to pour full light onto First Light Pass. The fortress had never seemed so worn. Cracks spidered along parapets like veins through brittle bone, and the twin wolf statues that flanked the inner gate now glistened with ebony streaks. The resin oozed from their stone eyes in silent, steady tears, dripping onto flags mottled by last night's rain. Runes carved at the gatehead pulsed in faint intervals of lavender and violet, dimming only when someone stared too long, as if the lines knew they were being watched. Lyana stepped across the courtyard's largest fissure, barefoot to feel the mountain's rhythm, her boots dangling from 2 fingers at her side. Pebbles clicked and rolled into the depths, but no rumble answered. She placed one palm flat on the chilled flagstone. A slow, deliberate pulse shivered into her bones, subtle as breath held too long. She lifted her head and found Lucian 10 paces away, mirroring her posture exactly, eyes closed, hand pressed to the same crack. His pendant glowed beneath the collar of his tunic, throwing soft violet arcs against the damp air. Without speaking, they rose and walked, soft steps matching, pendants warming further when their shoulders drew close enough for heat to mingle. At the courtyard's edge, they paused under the weeping statues. Lucian opened his mouth, but no sound felt right. She shook her head in answer, accepting the quiet as their truest language this morning. High above, a copper bell rang brief and muted, signaling warriors to gather at the practice grounds. Lyrian was already there when Darius and Kaelin arrived with spar blades and chalk for footwork drills. Moonlight still lingered in Lyrian's eyes, haunted by visions he had not confessed. He bowed to Darius, drew the wooden practice sword in a single fluid motion, and slipped into ready stance. Kaelin flicked a grin meant to reassure, then squared off. They exchanged slow strikes, each movement measured. When Lyrian saw Kaelin's right elbow drop a finger's breadth, flames leapt behind his eyes. The black-winged wolf flashed quick as lightning, wings blotting the sky, and Kaelin's guard dropped wider than he'd intended. Lyrian staggered, blade clattering to stone. Darius called a halt, frown deepening. Kaelin approached, gripping Lyrian's shoulder. "You're here, not there," Kaelin whispered. "Whatever wings you saw, they are smoke this morning." Lyrian managed a nod and retrieved the sword, hands trembling. Darius adjusted foot spacing with a tap of the practice blade. They started again, slower, silent, but for breath. On the library balcony, Liora organized parchment, forcing calm into each finger. She laid out blank sheets and dipped a quill, but before ink kissed paper, sound shimmered in her skull. Ancient vowels, low and tumbling like water over stone, coalesced into runes that had no shape yet. She felt them ring behind her eyes. A flicker of panic sent the quill scratching wide across parchment. She gasped, pressing her hand to her chest. The page now bore a perfect spiral, uninked, engraved by nothing she could see. The symbol glowed faint silver, then faded. She whispered an apology to the silent room, even though she wasn't sure to whom, and rolled the parchment into a scroll case for Thalos. Down in the small training yard by the eastern wall, Lyana and Lucian faced each other with twin practice blades, Raven and Thalia watching from a wooden bench beneath a tattered awning. Rain misted the ground, raising the scent of earth. They circled, eyes never leaving the others, as synchronized as 2 reflections. Lucian thrust, Lyana parried. Lyana cut low. Lucian retreated, pivoting. Sparks flared where wood cracked against wood, pendants glowing hotter each time blades crossed. When their wrists brushed, a lance of heat flared through both arms, blades rattling free. They staggered apart, breathing ragged. Pendants throbbed like second hearts. Thalia stepped forward. "Enough." She reached to steady Lucian. Raven seized Lyana's shoulders, eyes scanning for burns. None were visible, but the heat still shimmered in the air between the twins, visible ripples bending drizzle but into steam. Lucian forced his breathing to slow, focusing on the rhythm of Lyana's heart, echoing through the bond. She nodded once, showing she felt the same. Mid-morning found Raven and Thalia in a private alcove behind the infirmary. Stone walls sweated moisture where torches burned low. Raven unrolled a small linen bundle. Inside lay a handful of black seeds, each pulsing ember light. She said they had fallen from her braid while she slept, and when she crushed one between fingers, a crimson mist seeped out, forming the silhouette of Lyana entwined in chains. Thalia answered by confessing a dream she had hidden since the first anchor. Lyana toppled on an altar of stone, blood washing away silver runes. They clasped hands, two mothers bargaining with destiny. Thalia insisted they must guide the twins through the next rites slowly. Raven argued that caution could grant the rogue factions time to strike. They resolved to speak jointly to Aldrich and the Lycan king at dusk. Meanwhile, in a council antechamber, Aldrich's boot beat a steady rhythm on chipped flagstone while elders murmured fear. A thin-lipped veteran named VIII declared that the twin bond had drawn the quake. Sever the bond, he argued, and the mountain would sleep again. Another elder countered that severing might kill the twins outright. Aldrich, jaw set, responded with statistics of ward improvements since the first anchoring, but his voice betrayed unease. When Lucian the Lycan king entered, cloak damp from drizzle, conversation stilled. He announced no further anchors would be attempted until airs and echo found balance. VIII slammed fist onto table, but the Lycan king's stare froze protest. The elder subsided, muttering. Shortly before sunset, a novice guard discovered a ritual chamber beneath the library, reeking of burned sage and spoiled iron. The protective sigil at its threshold had been inverted, lines twisted inward like fangs. A small obsidian shard rested on the altar, carved with the same glyph that once slashed Aiden's arm. Thalos and the shaman arrived, chanted cleansing verses and scattered river salt that fizzed on stone. Yet before they could question the sentries assigned to watch the door, one guard was missing, his post abandoned. Lyrian and Liora were summoned. Leora's pulse spiked when she saw the shard. Her pendant knot burned cold. She and Lyrian searched the chamber's corners. Beneath a toppled candle stand, he found a sliver of parchment scorched on two edges. The glyph repeated, but under it someone had inked a phrase. Flame forgotten, remembers itself in ruin. Lyrian pocketed it. Night painted the pass in velvet charcoal, and with it rose a restless wind that moaned through half-repaired cracks. At moonrise, the twins assembled at the sacred pool, its surface still glowing faint blue from the last cleansing ritual. Kaelin stood guard at the arch, Darius and Isara nearby. The twins knelt at compass points around the water while Thalos traced a circle with his staff. Each lowered fingertips to the surface. Moonlight quivered, drew them down. The courtyard around them blurred. Stone vanished, replaced by a crimson forest of trees aflame yet unconsumed, branches reaching like skeletal hands. Lyana climbed a spiral staircase cut into the trunk of a burning oak. Every step dripped sparks. Above the canopy, Lucian wandered paths of ash, backward howls twisting into words that hissed, "The flame must remember." He understood the phrase but could not answer. Somewhere below, Liora saw Lyana step from the final stair and slip on flame-slick bark, tipping into burning emptiness. She lunged to catch her, but grasped only smoke. Panic rippled through the bond. Across the dream landscape, Lyrian turned to stone mid-swing of a sword, his marble face carved in eternal shout, while blocks of granite crashed around him, trapping Lucian and Liora in stone nets. Light cracked overhead. The scene froze. 4 simultaneous gasps yanked them from vision. They jerked upright around the pool, pendants seared skin, symbols glowed unfamiliar. Lyana's eye rune, now framed by a band of dancing flame. Lucian's mirrored eye circled by 3 wing shapes. Liora's knot threaded with flickering embers. Lyrian's crescent blade wreathed in cracked stone lines. Thalos stepped back, eyes wide, unable to name them. Deep night later, a shadow crept through the eastern wing corridors. The intruder moved with footfalls lighter than moth wings, body cloaked in gray ash that masked scent. They slipped into the narrow passage leading to the twins' chambers. Doors stood closed but unbarred. Instead of entering, the figure knelt, drew a circle on the flagstones with a talon dipped in thick crimson ink. Inside the circle they scribed the cursed glyph, then fled through a servant passage. Moments later, Thalia, restless after her dream, padded through dim hallways. She froze at sight of the blood rune. Raven, searching for Lyana, came from the opposite direction. Their eyes met over the foul symbol, understanding dawning. Raven whispered that panic would feed whoever placed the mark. Together they wiped the rune with moon petal cloths, burned the cloth in a brazier, and said nothing to the guards. They hid the knowledge between themselves, fearing the council's reaction. Longitude of stars shifted toward dawn. Kaelin patrolled ramparts with Kieran. Below, Aiden slept peacefully, no words on his lips, though the air inside his chest glowed faint amber, as if a memory of fire had taken lodging there. Liora found Lyrian in the library doorway, scroll in hand, new runes reflecting in sleepy hazel eyes. They exchanged no greeting, shared only a quiet nod that said, "We endure." Lucian stood atop the central tower watching daylight lift like a veil. Lyana joined him, breath fogging the morning. She had not slept since the vision. He took her hand. Pendants warmed. Far off, a single ray of sunlight touched the cracked peak of the abyssal crag, making its top blaze like a coal on the horizon. He murmured, "The flame remembers." She replied, "And we will decide what it burns." Morning brightened from gray to pale gold, but the pass wore the color uneasily, as if it borrowed light it could not keep. At first bell, choir horns sounded to summon every house's wolves for communal rites. Instead of the usual ringing tone, the note fluttered, warbling like a reed split by wind. Elders exchanged discreet worries. The mountain answered with a low resonance, too low for human hearing, yet clear to every half-shift sense. Wolves pricked ears to a rumble that trembled through marrow, then faded. Kaelin guided Aiden to the outer training yard where Kieran taught young squires archery. Shafts thudded into straw targets, but each release sounded muted, as if air thickened around the arrows. Aiden handed Kaelin the whistle he had carved with Ella's help and said he woke remembering another dream phrase. "Stone asleep, waits to breathe." Kaelin jotted it with charcoal on his leather vambrace, promising to show Thalos. Across the courtyard, Lyana practiced blade work alone beneath the dripping statues. She moved slowly, balancing Dawnshir's weight through arcs that felt more dance than combat. Each time the blade rose to guard, a waterfall echo whispered up the steel. She halted, pressing runic stone to her chest. It pulsed warm but calm. Raven approached, cloak trailing rainwater. She watched a full sequence before speaking. "Your stance angle's wider today," Raven noted. "Expecting someone larger?" "Expecting wings," Lyana answered, forcing a smile. "If Lucian's vision belongs to him, mine should answer." Raven clasped her daughter's shoulders. "Let wings come on their own time. You cannot force feathers from stone." Nearby, Lucian sparred under Thalia's supervision. Thalia threw a dry branch at him mid-sequence. He pivoted instinctively, striking the branch from the air in one smooth motion. Sparks of violet ticked along his bracers. Thalia lowered her cloak hood, revealing worried eyes. "Your reflexes burn too eager," she warned. "Better eager than late," Lucian replied. He glanced across the yard at Lyana. Their gazes met for a heartbeat. Their pendants mirrored flashes of lavender and violet. He could feel warmth slide through his ribs. Her pride at his strike. Her tension at Raven's caution. In the south wing, Liora knelt at a chalkboard while Thalos traced ancient glyphs in spirals. The chalk never touched stone. It hovered 2 finger widths above, inscribing light that looked liquid. Liora closed her eyes and heard shapes hum before they formed. She recited the hums aloud. Thalos nodded each time she spoke a pitch. "Rune arrives first as song," Thalos told her. "Stone only copies." Liora opened her eyes. The spiral glowed silver, then dimmed. "Then the echo sings?" she asked. "The echo amplifies," he corrected. "It borrows songs already sung and plays them louder. You must decide which melodies reach its ear." They broke when a runner arrived, breath fogging. A disappearing guard had been found at the mountain's lower cistern, alive, but half-shifted, body sheened with frost, though water there was lukewarm. He repeated one phrase. "The crag calls the flame." Thalos sent Liora to fetch Lyrian. Lyrian arrived moments later with the parchment he had pocketed. He and Liora followed Thalos through vaulted tunnels carved when the pass served as watch-post centuries before. At the cistern arch, healers clustered around the trembling guard. His eyes were ringed with lunar white nails, half claw, half flesh. He whispered the phrase again, staring at nothing. Liora felt the words claw at her mind. Lyrian's heart hammered in echo. They exchanged glances. Both sensed that the phrase wasn't prophecy, but command. Thalos knelt, touched two fingertips to the guard's brow, murmured a binding verse. The guard inhaled sharply, claws retracting, skin steaming as frost evaporated. He would heal, but on his forearm lay a black brand shaped like an inverted spiral of wings, same cursed sigil. Liora hissed through teeth. Lyrian unrolled his parchment. The glyph matched exactly. The shaman examined the brand. "Bled with obsidian ink, seared by moonbane root," she said. "It ties him to the rogue faction, perhaps unwillingly." Thalos ordered extra watch at all armories. He sent the twins to warn Kaelin that any weapon stored unsealed might be poisoned with blood runes. Afternoon skies bruised violet, threatening storm. In the council chamber, elders reconvened around the quartz table, tension thicker than the clouds. Darius stood at Raven's left, Isara at Aldrich's right. Varric still campaigned to sever the bond. Raven brandished reports from the border scouts. Rogue wolves gathering near ruined barrow sites, carving the cursed spiral into bark. Severing, she argued, would douse hope and feed rebellion. Lucian, the Lycan king, repeated his stance. No third anchor until heirs mastered echo. Aldrich clenched fists on chair arms, torn between fear and loyalty. When Thalos requested time to analyze the new pendant runes, Varric scoffed. "Time is what the mountain devours," he growled. During a recess, Lucian watched Varric whisper with two visiting captains from Frostwind. Suspicion burned. Raven noticed too, beckoning Lucian to her side. "Keep eyes open tonight," she said. "Danger wears many cloaks." Night sank early, wind muscling through broken shutters. Aiden's training ended at dusk. Kaelin escorted him to Ella in the healer's wing. On the path they passed an old shrine carved into a cliff wall. A wolf crouched over a flame bowl. The bowl brimmed with rainwater reflecting moonlight. Aiden paused, transfixed. "What word's in your head now?" Kaelin asked. Aiden whispered, "Remember." Kaelin frowned. "What must the flame remember?" The boy shrugged, couldn't say. Kaelin later brought that word to Thalos and the shaman. Thalos tapped staff on stone. "Key phrase through all echoes," he mused. "The flame remembers." Elsewhere, Liora found Lyana in the old armory, rewrapping Donshere's handle with fresh lavender braid. Liora set her shield beside the blade, showing the fracture line. Silver threads pulsed brighter than before. "You feel heavier," Liora said softly. "I gave fear to the hollow, but not worry." Lyana's voice cracked. "Then worry out loud, I will hold it," Liora replied. Lyana breathed deep. "I fear we step into prophecy's mouth willingly." "Maybe the mouth is a gate," Liora offered. They hugged, forehead to forehead. Runic warmth passed between sisters, easing the knot in both chests. Lyrian and Lucian met in the archery courtyard, empty except for moonlit puddles. Lyrian confessed the phrase, "Flame forgotten remembers itself in ruin." Lucian clenched jaw. If they push to sever us, ruin follows faster. Lyrian agreed, pulling a stringless bow from the rack. It was ceremonial, carved from silver ash. He aimed it at the sky. No arrow flew, yet overhead a shooting star streaked west, flaming as it fell behind abyssal crag. Both saw it. Both knew an omen. Near midnight, palace torches guttered. Guards along the east corridor felt sudden drowsiness and sank to knees in uneasy sleep. The assassin returned. Cloaked in ash gray, face hidden by a mask of lunar bone, they glided through shadow toward the purification wing. The twins' doors were shut. The assassin pressed ear to Lucian's chamber. Soft breathing inside. A rune stone hummed faintly on the threshold. The assassin withdrew the claw again, dipped it into a vial of dark ichor, lifted it toward the lintel. Before ink touched stone, Dawn's lavender edge hissed in the corridor. Lyana stepped from behind a tapestry, eyes blazing, pendant flaring. Lucian's door flew open. Violet runes blazed along his bare forearms. The assassin pivoted and hurled a handful of black dust. Lyana sliced through it. Dust clung to blade, then burst into violet flame. Lucian grabbed the assassin's wrist, forcing the claw downward. Shadows coiled around the figure, warping shape, making Lucian's grip slip. The intruder twisted free and leapt toward a high window, but Lyrian and Liora appeared at the corridor's far end. Lyrian slammed his palm to the wall. Rune slats snapped closed. Liora lifted her shield. The fracture thread blazed bright, casting a barrier of thin silver light. The assassin slammed into it, rebounding. Kalen barreled up the stairs with Darius. The assassin saw choices collapse, spun, and hurled the claw toward Liora. Lucian intercepted, arm raised. The claw grazed Bracer, screeched, leaving a line of smoldering black. Lucian winced but stood firm. Lyana stepped in, drove Dawn's flat against the cloak, pinning the figure to the stone. The assassin hissed, voice like gravel sliding. The flame must not remember. Before any could question, the cloak disintegrated into ash. Beneath, no body, only a swirling ribbon of smoke that slipped through floor cracks. Gone. Dawn's edge cooled. Lucian's bracer dimmed. Silence swallowed the corridor. They stared at one another, pulse echoing in shared bond. An hour later, Thalia and Raven examined the black ichor residue. Its odor matched the rune in the east wing, ash thick with marrow rot. The claw, left behind, lay inert. Thalos studied it. Bone of a wolf long dead, himmerber. Immermem pacum der hesodum kauern door amberant, tier. Dedicam der umtworm. The echo's shadow. He looked at the twins, his expression tangled between awe and dread. Infirmary healers tended Lucian's scorch mark. The burn resembled a wing imprint, but as water dripped over it, lines faded to faint scars that formed the shape of a flame wrapped in feathers. Liora traced her braid, where new runes glowed. Lyrian added the night's events to parchment, hand shaking only after he finished. In the pre-dawn hours, Raven, Thalia, Aldrich, and the Lycan king met privately. Torchlight wavered over tired faces. Raven spoke first. Assassin wielded echo as blade. Aldrich countered, or fear disguised as echo. Thalia placed the claw on the table. Prophecy fights back. The Lycan king lifted his gaze. Then we teach prophecy our rules. They agreed to double watch, to move rogue suspected elders to guarded quarters, to begin preparations for travel to Abyssal Crag, but at their pace. They would not sever the bond. They would guard it. Sunrise found Lyana and Lucian seated on the north wall, still clad in night clothes under cloaks. They watched sky bleed rose behind mountain peaks. Their pendants now bore new runes, tiny flames encircled by feather arcs glowing gently. Lyana broke quiet first. I laughed yesterday, did you hear it? Yes, he said. It sang louder than any fear. She rested head on his shoulder. Below, workers hammered braces, children fetched water, wolves paced battlements sniffing clear morning. The mountain's pulse felt calm, as though listening. Liora and Lyrian approached. joining them at the parapet. 4 pendants lined in a row glowed like small suns. Lyrian said softly, "Flame remembers." Liora added, "Echo listens." Lucian nodded. "We decide what story they share." Lyana looked to the far horizon where Abyssal Crag caught first light, its summit smoldering gold. She breathed deep, feeling weight and wonder in equal measure. For one heartbeat, the 4 of them shared absolute stillness. The echo sensed, lent a hush. In that hush, fear loosened its grip, and purpose drew its first unhindered breath. The day advanced beneath a brittle sun that offered little warmth. Masons hammered at fresh braces along the outer rampart, while teams of rune weavers traced silver chalk across every threshold. Their lines now included the new flame and feather motifs copied from the twins' pendants, an attempt to weave the living bond into the fortress's own skin. Each chalkstroke glittered, then settled into the stone as though absorbed, hinting at small acceptance from whatever consciousness pulsed beneath first light pass. The artisans moved on, satisfied, unaware that fine dust lingered in their wake, swirling briefly into spiral shadows before drifting away. Raven convened an open midday assembly in the main courtyard, so even the lowest ranks could hear truth and bathe rumor in daylight. Wolves gathered in half circles, some bandaged, some still trembling from the quake's memory. Lucian, the Lycan king, stood tall beside Aldrich, their truce visible in the way shoulders angled toward each other, rather than apart. Raven spoke first, voice clear over the restless wind. She admitted that Echo stirred, and that an assassin had breached the east wing, but she also announced the twins had stood against that darkness, and the crack in the courtyard had receded after their vigil. Murmurs rippled, amazement outweighing fear, if only for a heartbeat. Varric, called forth by duty, questioned whether the assassin's failure meant the rogue faction would escalate. Raven did not deny the threat, but countered that unity would strangle sabotage faster than suspicion ever could. Lucian, the Lycan king, declared new tripled watch rotations, each squad mixing wolves from different houses to prevent fracturing along pack lines. Aldrich pledged Frostwind's archers, Mistveil's healers, and Stormfall's crystal forgers to reinforce the pass. Murmurs warmed to approval as news moved from danger to solutions. Above them, the sun slid from brittle to brassy, and for a moment, even the weeping statues ceased their resin tears. Thalos invited the assembly to witness a demonstration meant to calm fears. He unrolled a crimson cloth on a platform and placed the assassin's bone claw upon it. The talon looked inert, black ink crusted on its tip. Thalos lifted his staff, chanting in a tongue only he and the shaman understood. The bone quivered, ink slickening as if fresh, then hissed, dissolving into a smear of shadow that tried to flee. Thalos struck the plank with his staff. Silvery tendrils shot from the wood, entrapping the shadow until it fell still and sank to ash. Echo fed the claw, Thalos announced, but Echo also revealed it. Light and shadow answer the same call. We choose which name we speak. Later, in the high library alcove where skylight washed dust motes into golden haze, Liora and Lyrian spread scrolls across a low stone table to decode the new pendant runes. They discovered each symbol resembled a constellation above Abyssal Crag in late autumn. Flames, wings, knots, blades mirrored in the stars. Liora pressed fingertips to parchment and felt vibrations like distant drums in the sky. Lyrian read aloud. When star and stone mirror heart, flame passes safely. He paused, running a hand through dark hair. Safe passage, perhaps, he muttered, if we bring our hearts in harmony with sky. Liora wondered aloud if that harmony meant complete surrender, or something subtler, like remembering laughter in the midst of battle. Aiden entered with Kaelin clutching a small slate. He looked shy, cheeks red, but stepped close. On the slate he had chalked the new phrase he heard during a midday doze. Quiet flame sings open gates. The letters were correct, though he could not read them. Lyrian traced the words, astonished. The syntax matched ancient wolf song script. Liora thanked Aiden, tousling his hair. Kaelin said the boy had rested peacefully since the night's attack, without further whispering. Thalos, arriving then, smiled softly, telling Aiden his dream gift would help forge a map of living runes to guide the next journey. The child beamed, proud of usefulness. In a sun-soaked corner of the southern training yard, Lucian and Lyana resumed their spar, this time using blunted steel. Each blow rang louder than earlier sessions, metallic claps echoing off ramparts. Spectators gathered, warriors, scouts, even elders who pretended disinterest. The twins moved faster, their bond now a visible thread in the tilt of shoulders and measured breath. Every parry produced tiny sparks that fluttered into air and faded. At the crescendo, Lyana dropped her blade, slid beneath Lucian's guard, and pressed a palm to his chest where the burn mark hid. He froze, breath caught. Their pendants blazed bright, then mellowed into soft heat. A hush fell over the yard. Rather than finish the bout, they lowered weapons simultaneously and bowed to each other. The watchers erupted in renewed respect. Some felt hope ignite, seeing tangible strength in oneness. Evening clouds gathered as Raven, Thalia, Aldrich, and the Lycan king convened on the tower balcony overlooking the cracked courtyard. Below, rune weavers sealed final chalk lines with river oil. The leaders agreed Abyssal Crag's anchor remained essential, but only once new security layers were tested. The Lycan king proposed a night-long vigil of the twins at the sacred pool to deepen their harmony with Echo. Raven offered to stand watch with them. Thalia volunteered as well. Aldrich pledged Frostwind Rangers to patrol outer slopes, vowing no rogue emissaries would slip near again. Dawn of the second day, if Echo remained calm, planning for the journey south would commence in earnest. Twilight fell. Torches flickered to life, their flames waving like pennants as chill wind surged from cavern mouths. The sacred pool courtyard shimmered where silvery runes traced its lip. 4 cushions lay at compass points, east for Lyana, west for Lucian, south for Liora, north for Lyrian. Surrounding them, guardians formed a living ring: Kaelin, Darius, Isara, Kieran, Ella, and a dozen veteran wolves sworn to silence. Raven and Thalia stood near the archway. Thalos and the shaman hovered by a low brazier burning moon petal and juniper. The heirs took seats crossing legs, resting hands on knees. Water rippled though no wind reached its surface. Each inhalation carried a faint note, a chord strummed by unseen fingers. Liora whispered she heard runes forming. Lyrian answered with steady breath. Lucian felt wings brush his shoulders but didn't flinch. Lyana sensed flame dance behind eyelids, but accepted heat rather than turning away. The pond brightened. Its reflection cast stars across faces, even though sky had only a sliver of moon and few visible lights. Slowly, the 4 slipped into a shared dreaming. Their chests rose and fell as one, breath plumed in unison. Outside, Raven felt the synchrony, heart swelling despite worry. The Lycan king rested a hand on her arm, grounding them both. Inside the shared realm, Lyana again found herself on the flaming staircase, but this time Liora stood on the step below, shield glowing silver. Lyana reached back, their hands clasped, flame retreating along the bark. Lucian walked a forest path where wolf howls reversed into speech, but as he listened, words rewove into a melody he remembered from childhood lullabies. Lyrian saw stone forms crack, dust flaking. The statues flexed, returning flesh. Slowly, the 4 converged at a clearing under a vaulted canopy of glowing constellations. The winged wolf circled overhead, watching. It opened its mouth, but instead of threat, it released a sigh that became whisper. Remember the first breath, for it carries the promise of the last. Echo's voice, or the mountains, or some ancestral choir, they could not parse which, but the phrase settled into every heart, their pendants scorched bright, runes shifting, flame feather symbols aligned around a central seed of light. In waking world, guardians saw pendants blaze like tiny suns. Suddenly the courtyard trembled, the gentlest quiver, not violent yet. Rune lines inlaid to seal cracks shimmered gold, then dimmed. Workers on night shift halted, glancing at each other in alarm. In the vision, the winged wolf folded enormous wings and approached the four, lowering its head. It touched each pendant with its muzzle, leaving traces of stardust. Then it dissolved into a cloud of black ash that drifted upward, reforming into a star in the canopy. The twins awoke in unison, eyes snapping open. The pool's water calmed, glowing a deep cerulean. Soft steam rose. Thalos inhaled sharply. Even he seemed surprised. Raven hurried forward but halted when she saw the pendants. Each bore a new inner ring, delicate runes describing a spiral of flame flowing outward into feathers, then folding into a silent knot. Lucian spoke first, voice low but unwavering. Echo sang of promise. Lyana nodded, tears glimmering unshed. It asked us to remember the first breath. Liora pressed fingers to her chest. I think it means we carry the origin within us, path and peace alike. Lyrian lifted his pendant to torchlight. And final breath will mirror the first. But what shape that breath takes depends on what we do next. Kaelin exchanged glances with Darius. Hope flickered in their eyes, spotted by caution. Thalos approached the pool, dipped one hand, and brought water to his brow. The flame has remembered, he declared softly. It remembers itself in unity. Not all shared his reverence. Varric, hidden in archway shadow, watched the twins with narrowed gaze, gripping a concealed bone charm. When torches dimmed briefly, he slipped into darkness, cloak swirling as he made haste to convene those still aligned with severance. Before dispersing, Raven drew the heirs close. Tomorrow we plan, she said. Abyssal crag waits, but we move with deliberate feet, not fear-stung haste. Thalia rested a hand atop her friends. Aldrich and the Lycan king approached, nodding agreement. Night deepened. Guardians escorted the heirs back to their chambers, doorways reinforced now with new flame feather runes. A light drizzle kissed parapets, carrying petrichor and the faintest scent of juniper blooms. Within her room, Lyana set dawns here by the window and opened shutters. Distant mountain peaks loomed under starlit haze. She breathed slow, recalling the clearing, the wolf's whispered promise. Across the fortress, Lucian traced wing flame lines on his bracer, feeling for the first time that wings might be not weight, but wind. Liora sat at her desk, quill poised, and found she could write new runes before thinking them. She recorded the winged wolf's phrase, sealing it in wax. Lyrian, below in the library, catalogued stardust husks left where the vision faded. He placed them in a glass vial, noting faint energy pulsing within. Near dawn, a scout arrived breathless with news. Rogue camps south of the pass were breaking, some members fleeing toward Mistvale's border. Word of the assassin's failure had spread, sowing fear among dissidents. Yet Varric was missing from his quarters. His guard lay asleep under Spellwine's haze. Tension flared anew. The Lycan king ordered search parties, but quietly. No panic would mar the day's fragile hope. Sunrise bled over the horizon, turning the sky to pink fire. From the courtyard crack, no mist rose, no trembling answered. Wolf statues no longer wept. On the highest tower, the twins met once more, summoned by habit more than plan. They watched dawn ignite Abyssal Crag in golden flame. Their pendants glowed in returning light, new runes stable. Lyana exhaled. The flame remembers. Lucian took her hand. Now we carry it forward. Liora and Lyrian joined, standing side by side. 4 pendants cast a single pooled radiance, bright as newborn sun. Far below, the mountain listened, silent yet aware, and for the briefest moment, every rune in First Light Pass shimmered in harmony. Flame, feather, knot, blade, ready to guide or to test the next breath they chose to take.